Okay, Cookie, am I okay to begin? Not sure if people heard me.
You
Test.
ready? You're ready?
I hear you, Adam. It's Cliff.
Thank you. Cookie, I believe we do have a quorum at 7 p.m. Are we okay to begin?
Yes, we are.
I think we are.
Oh, can you hear me, Adam?
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and start, and we'll see if it becomes a problem.
I was just typing with her. Let me see. I just want to make sure we're being recorded and that all of the broadcasting is happening. I was just typing with her. Just give me a second.
Of course. Thank you, Deputy Director Zucker.
Adam, this is Cookie. Are you able to hear me? No. How do I unmute? Adam, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
All right, we're ready to go live.
Thank you. Welcome to the Sustainability and Infrastructure meeting of October 13th, 2021. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Figured I might get some more use out of this Talbot's Toyland flag, now a San Mateo artifact. I may not even been able to show it. Oh, I did. It looks great. Oh, awesome. Thanks, everybody, for joining me on that, and welcome to the meeting today. Due to the physical distancing protocols in place at this time, we continue to encourage public participation remotely. Information on how to provide public comment is explained at the bottom of the published agenda. There are two ways to participate. You can join the Zoom meeting by clicking on the link at the top of the agenda and use the raise your hand button to be called on for public comment at the appropriate times. Or you can phone in. Participation can be done by calling 408-638-0968 with conference ID number 872-9682-0700. The password is hashtag or pound 914019. If you enter that way, you can press *9 to raise your hand to be called on. And when you are called upon for public comment, you can press *6 to unmute, then state your name and provide your comments. These options for public comment will remain available until I close public comment period for any specific item. There is also general public comment for items not on the agenda. And public comment is available on items on the agenda during consideration of each item. With that said, the first item on our agenda tonight would be a consent calendar item number 1, Commission regular minutes for last month's meeting approval. And I would just like to ask the Commission if there are any questions or comments regarding those minutes.
Through the chair, do we need to do roll first? Or?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Thank you for that reminder, Vice Chair Narita. And Cookie, may we have roll, please?
Yes. Chair Lorraine?
Here.
Commissioner Robbins?
Here.
Commissioner Rita?
Present.
Commissioner Reyes and Rowinski, they're both absent and excused.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you for the point of order. And now I believe we may return to the consent agenda. If commissioners have questions or concerns with the minutes, please state them now. Otherwise, I could entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Seconded.
Very good. Cookie, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Lorraine,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins,
Aye.
Commissioner Narita.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. That would lead us to the next item on the agenda, which would be new business, agenda item number 2, proposed Crown Castle master license agreement for use of city-owned poles. And I believe we have a presentation by city staff and or Crown Castle. I will give you the floor.
Excuse me, through the chair. We have public comment for items not on the agenda.
Thank you. That's correct. So I'm clearly not following the order as well as I could be. I apologize for that. I would like to move to general public comment before we move to the next item on the agenda. And this would be for any items that are not currently on our agenda today. You can have up to 3 minutes per person. If you wish to participate in this public comment and you're on the Zoom meeting, you can reuse the raise your hand icon. Otherwise, you can press *9 to raise your hand. This is the time to give public comment on general items. And with that, Cookie, could you please unmute the first person?
I see 2 hands raised. Rich Hedges.
Thank you, Chair Lorraine and Commissioners. You're probably going to want to hear what I have to say tonight. I've called to thank you, or actually tuned in to thank you. Fashion Island was just repaved. It's a great job. The bridge was becoming very difficult to go across because, as you all know, that's fill land and the bridge is on pilings, so the ground had dropped a great deal. And so it was a rough bump getting on the bridge, and they've done a very good job, the construction company, in smoothing that out. I would like to encourage you, the Mariners Island Bridge that goes over Highway 92, is the approaches on both sides are actually more difficult, and we might want to look at in the near future doing something to make it easier to get up on the bridge without knocking your front end out of alignment. And just a note about the bridge itself, there's a tremendous amount of spalling, which is simply salt water leaching into the concrete and rusting the rebar and popping the concrete. And that's what I see when I walk across the bridge. I have no idea underneath of it, and if it is bad underneath, could eventually end up with concrete falling on passing cars. Just a note, I don't think it's imminent, but we might want to check it occasionally. And just want to then get some information. About 2.5 years ago, Measure S voted $100,000 to raise the wall along the San Mateo Creek. If that is not done on a time frame that goes with what FEMA wants us to do, we'll have several thousand homes back paying FEMA insurance at around $7,000 a year. So I'm just wondering what the progress is on that, and if you could agenda it sometime in the future and talk about what our plans are and when we're going to do the work and when we're going to get it completed. So that's an ask for you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate everything, especially what we used to call the Public Works Department. I guess we still do. The Infrastructure Department is doing for the city. They usually do a very good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rich, as I understand you to be a citizen who knows quite well our email addresses and whatnot, I would encourage you to please send a short note to publicworks@cityofsanmateo.org about the Measure S item you mentioned, and perhaps staff can get back to you that way. I would appreciate it. I
thought it was time that I alerted the commission that this is a pending item that could severely cause harm to many of our residents who in that neighborhood are just barely hanging on because of the cost. They're not, many of them, very high income people. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dave Clark.
Unmute. Commissioners, thank you so much for everything you're doing and your time in this. I just want to point out that Governor Newsom has passed AB 1376, which limits the sale of small off-road engines in 2022. Strongly advocate for the city to pass ordinance to limit the use of leaf blowers. You've heard all the arguments against it and numerous times. So I'll just leave it there, short and sweet. Can we please get rid of those damn things? That's the end of my message.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised.
Okay, I do see a phone number, so I'll just note that if that phone number would like to give general public comment, this would be the time, and you can press *9 to raise your hand. I'll just give it a moment. Okay. Otherwise, I will close public comment for this time, general public comment, and apologize to the public for going out of order here. And I appreciate Cookie and the commission for keeping me on track. And I will try to make sure I continue in the order we need to go in from now on. Now, I believe it might be time to go to the next item, number 2, proposed Crown Castle master license agreement for use of city-owned poles. And I believe we do have at least one presentation. We have staff and the gentleman from Crown Castle. So I will give the floor to staff, please.
Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew True. I'm an engineering tech for the City of San Mateo Public Works, and I'm here to present on Crown Castle's proposed master license agreement for the use of city-owned poles. Also here tonight is Tracy Scramaglia, Senior Engineer for Public Works, and she'll be available for questions and comment after the presentations. Just a little background on this agreement. The city has entered into 3 agreements with Verizon, AT&T, and XNet that are very similar to this one. We've chosen to bring this agreement to the commission as we did the previous agreements because of the public interest on this topic. The agenda for this item is the staff presentation, which I will be giving. It will cover why we would want to use a master license agreement, the timeline, the main provisions of the master license agreement, as well as an overview of the wireless permit process, and finally a staff recommendation. Following our presentation will be Mark Myers from Crown Castle, also be giving a short presentation before opening to public and commissioner comment, at which time Tracy and myself will be available for questions, as well as Crown Castle. So why use a master license agreement? In order to install small cells on city streetlights, Crown Castle needs to enter into a master license agreement with the city. The city mainly would want to enter into this agreement because it reduces the need for wireless companies to install their own poles throughout the city. It also allows the city to work with carriers to locate small cell installations to less visually obtrusive locations. Lastly, the design of streetlights can be a little more visually appealing because the wiring of the small cell can be internal within the streetlight, which leads to a sleeker design. The main provisions of the master license agreement are as follows. The term is 10 years with 15 one-year renewals. The fee per pole is $270, which is paid annually. This fee is dictated by the FCC. Another provision of the master license agreement is the RF emission testing. They're required to comply with all FCC standards regarding RF. And lastly, a telecom permit is required for all installations under this master license agreement. And a lot of this is similar to, or all of this is similar to the past agreements that have been accepted by the city. The draft master license agreement that has been brought to the commission was prepared by staff and based on the previous agreements accepted by the city. This agreement, as well as any future license agreements, would require city council approval. A note is that city staff and city attorney are reviewing minor insurance questions with Crown Castle regarding this agreement, but these insurance changes will not affect the content of the agreement itself and will be resolved prior to the agreement being brought to city council. And I think the last point is that all proposed installations under this agreement will still be subject to city ordinance and require telecom permits to be obtained. And I also just wanted to touch shortly on the wireless permit process since the installations will still require this permit. The applicant has to apply for the wireless communication permit for each location. The city staff then reviews the permit documents in accordance with our municipal code and design standards. The permit is then approved or denied by the Director of Public Works, and appeals, if any, are brought before the S&I Commission. One note regarding appeals is that they cannot be based on RF emissions. Finally, staff recommends that the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission recommend approval of the master license agreement to City Council. If recommended for approval by the Commission, City Council action is required for final approval. And if Council approves, Count Castle may apply for telecom permits located on city-owned poles. Thank you for your time. That concludes my presentation. My contact information is here, and I will be turning it over to Crown Castle Representative Mark Myers. Tracy and I will be available for questions after the presentation.
Actually, thank you, Matthew. But before you do turn it over, I did have a quick question, I think, which might be good to go over before we get too far afield. Just in a previous slide, you had a note, maybe this one. Yes, that you mentioned if agreement is approved, any future license agreements entered into would require city council approval. This one also requires city council approval, right? So it's not necessarily different, or is it? Is this one different in any way from the previous ones or future ones in that regard?
No, they all have to go to city council for approval.
Okay, just check it. Thank you. Okay, any other commissioners have questions on staff's presentation before we turn it over? I appreciate your indulgence.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Mark Myers. I'm with Crown Castle. I'm the manager of permitting California for small cell and fiber solutions. I have a short presentation here. Just as Matt mentioned, we are respectfully requesting approval of our master license agreement, a recommendation for approval by the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission for planning committee or for City Council approval. This will allow us to attach our infrastructure to the city's poles throughout the city. So I have a short presentation here, just sort of give you an idea on who Crown is. And let's see, in case you haven't heard of us, let's see here. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
That's good. All
I
right.
can.
Thank you. Good. All right. All right. Crown Castle is a willing partner. We are a unique player in this space because we have a portfolio of infrastructure that connects cities and communities and users with data, essential data and technology. And we work together closely with many jurisdictions throughout the nation, including in the state of California and elsewhere. We abide by and follow federal and state compliance guidelines. We work hard to ensure our safety.
Recording in progress.
So many assets, and then we do have, as the end users of this, this infrastructure, end users, it is ours. We're the last owner of this, so we have we keep a network operations center so that we're able to monitor our systems at all times throughout that. throughout the life of them, so that if there are any issues, that we can respond immediately. We're a public utility registered in almost every state. I think we're just down to one now. When I started over 5 years ago, we weren't quite in every one. We're getting close. I'm not quite sure why we're not yet in Wyoming, but as you can see, we cover most of the United States, including California. So Crown Castle is unique in that we're a shared infrastructure provider and we sort of bring this infrastructure to the end users, and our common our customers are often wireless carriers. Sometimes they're enterprise solutions such as libraries and hospitals and colleges and things like that. But we have a shared infrastructure of fiber, towers, and small cell, and that's kind of our portfolio of infrastructure. And they're all connected through this fiber network that we have throughout the nation. And throughout the nation, we're one of the leading providers in fiber and small cell. As indicated here, throughout the nation, we have over 80,000 route miles now, and either on air or under construct, about 80,000 small cells as well, with our base macro infrastructure at more than 40,000 towers. So as you can see, we have a good, broad, vast covering throughout the United States, and we service a great number of customers throughout the nation, including California. And as you can see here, we're also deployed in, like I said, almost more than 700 different municipalities. And most of those, we do have to get very similar type of agreements, such as this, to be able to successfully attach to city-owned infrastructure, including the poles and such. So it just is just kind of a reminder of what you already know, probably. You know, our infrastructure is what they use to provide this big data transport, so that we have that ubiquitous coverage, so that, you know, when you turn on the faucet, the water comes out. It's kind of the same thing with, you know, just like electricity, flip the lights. You know, that's how wireless is becoming now. The demand is always there. It doesn't go away. And so we provide that by establishing this infrastructure that our users use. A benefit of the fiber as well is by taking the fiber to a lot of these small cells and to our towers, you know, we pass by a lot of enterprise businesses that we're also able to easily service and connect to as well throughout all of our communities. So this, in terms of what we have proposed in the city and what this agreement will affect us specifically, this is just a sort of a broad general overview. Obviously, it's just an aerial map here of the city and sort of the number of nodes we look to deploy over the course of the next couple of years. This is what we have sort of on the plan right now. Overall, again, our numbers can fluctuate based on our customer demand and what they're asking for, but it's about 200 total small cell nodes, of which about half of those would be specifically designed or have been identified to locate on city-owned infrastructure. The other half would generally be on wood utility poles or other existing infrastructure. While we do have the ability to place our own poles or our own infrastructure in the right-of-way, we obviously like to utilize, you know, poles and infrastructure and signage and whatever is already in place, just to minimize the disruption and to avoid any clutter or aesthetic mishaps by the addition of new poles or things of that nature. So this plan, again, is sort of an overview. It's not like we don't quickly just come in the next day and submit all these applications. It's still a relatively not a lengthy process, but a process to have the nodes designed, the locations selected. We're fully aware of the city's design guidelines, and then we can live within those, and we design to those consistent aesthetics so that we can deploy quickly and efficiently. This general overview, again, like I said, is a couple hundred nodes. The timing on this would be extended over a course of at least 2 years. Generally, once we start designing the network of where we're going to lay our fiber and how to, the most efficient way to connect them via fiber, then we start to sort of cluster them and come in and are in communications with the city. We like to partner with them just so that, all the way through the process, right? We're the end users of this. We're going to be doing a lot of work in the city, bringing, this connectivity to the city and to the people that live there. So, we want to be a good, willing partner and a member of the community as well. So we work closely with you in establishing, consistent run rates that are acceptable, by both parties and that are manageable throughout the process so that we're never overwhelmed or never fall behind, but yet we meet our forecasts and our expectations. So, generally, that's it. As mentioned before, we are a shared infrastructure provider, and having this type of agreement will give us the vehicle to allow us to attach our infrastructure, our equipment, if you will, to the city's infrastructure so that we can enhance the connectivity throughout the city. So if you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. At this time, I think I'd like to ask my fellow commissioners if they have questions. I see Commissioner Roberts has unmuted himself, so please feel free. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. My question is actually for staff. Though thank you, Mr. Myers. I appreciate that presentation. One is, I note the materials that the master license has been reviewed by staff. Did that include anybody from the council's office? Is the city attorney's office, have they reviewed this? Is there somebody who's looking at all these?
Yeah, I can answer that. This is Tracy Scrimalia, Senior Engineer
Hey,
with
Tracy.
Public Works. Hi, how you doing? So all of our agreements we run through our city attorney's office, and we work with them actually very closely in developing these agreements. Each time the agreements come through, like we've done in the previous one with the other telecoms that have entered into these license agreements, we update it with new provisions that that benefit the city. So this one's no different. We've added a couple of different provisions. We are limited on the amount of money we can collect on this, as Matt mentioned in his presentation. But yes, we do work very closely with the city attorney's office, our director as well.
Great, thank you, Tracy. And could you, you've led into my bigger questions. I know that we've all been, well, I think at least I've been on, and Adam, you may have too. This isn't our first rodeo here. Looked at Verizon, AT&T, and some others. But it's mentioned that this agreement is substantially similar to those. My question, have there been any material changes? You've hinted at, I would suspect there's some from just the learning process. Is there any way to identify those changes that might actually be meaningful? I skimmed through the thing. I've looked at these before, but I'm not, though I do play attorney in real life, I'm not the city's attorney. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. You just maybe hit the, what improvements or if there's anything the city's had to give up on, that would also be interesting to know.
Yeah, no, it's basically just been like simplifying verbiage. We have a new assistant city attorney that's helping us with these than previous. Before it was Gabrielle. Now we have Ling, who's our city attorney on this right-of-way issue. So it's just more clarifications than actually adding. The major provisions, as Matt had displayed in his presentation, are the same. And as he mentioned before, we are looking at possibly revising the insurance requirements. But again, that would be reviewed by our city attorney's office as well as our insurance provider that we work with.
Well, you're making my job such as it is a lot easier, because that was my last question, is what are the insurance questions? But first I want to say to Matthew, thank you. That was a nice presentation. I don't know if I've seen you present before. I really appreciate that. But what are are there some insurance issues, or I'm guessing, I'll jump out and just guess that there's maybe Crown Castle's insurance obligations don't necessarily, or what they've got don't necessarily match the language in the agreement. We're trying to come to some level of understanding, or what do we have?
Yeah, I'll let Matt actually answer this question because he's very familiar with it.
It's mostly just both teams' attorneys kind of looking at the insurance limits and talking about what limits Crown Castle can provide versus what the city's asking for. So just kind of coming to a middle ground there.
Okay. It's actually, it's a question of coverage, yeah, and whether they're hitting that. Okay, I won't dig any further on that. That's all my questions. Adam, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Chair Narita, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you so much. Matthew, apologies in advance because I did not email you my questions ahead of time, which I normally do for staff. And I want to apologize. I just didn't have a moment. I get my first question. This is my first rodeo on a master license agreement because I'm the newest member. And I was wanting to understand for context, what is the city's vetting process for, when you receive a request from a potential licensee? What is that vetting process of the company itself? And are there certain parameters that are used to even make the agreement in the first place?
Yeah, this is Tracy again. Usually we don't go out and advertise this. So typically what happens is the telecoms come to us and it's been really just the main telecoms that have come forward to enter into the master license agreement, especially since we just did a big code update. And so, it really gives them more options on where to put their small cells, and they're not just limited to the utility poles, because that really limits them. And then it also limits their coverage areas. So they approach us, and then they have to enter into the license agreement as approved by our city attorney's office. If they don't, then we don't enter into agreement. We've had previous telecoms that have come to us and did not want to agree to the terms of the agreement. And so they went away, they disappeared. So I don't know if it's necessarily a vetting. It's just that it's our use of right of way. They have to agree to our terms, or else that's not a negotiation factor.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And yeah, I'm going to go a little bit in where my attorney had a little bit on the actual license agreement itself. And one of the things I noticed was for in the assignment, areas, for instance, if Crown were to exit for some reason or something like that and transfer their rights over to someone else, there were parameters around what that new assignee could be. And it sounded like it was, there was stuff about like the assignee, the new person new company can't, discriminate, have discriminatory practices or something like that. And I was just curious if, this also covers concerns about, it says a history of discrimination or employment practices that conflict with the city's non-discrimination policies. And I wasn't quite sure if that also meant, the company itself, or if, like, for instance, the CEO was problematic, or if, for instance, we are the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission. If they, for instance, were like, screw sustainability, we're not a green company. I looked up Crown website, there's stuff there that seems to suggest that they're not the case. But if a transfer were to happen under any of these master license agreements, I was just curious, at that point, what are the values that the city uses in the case of a transfer?
Yeah, that would be something we would talk with our city attorney's office. And certainly if there was something egregious by the company or the new licensee, that would make us want to, not stay entered into the agreement. That option is there. I believe that wording is just there to cover, because you never know, who can buy, who takes over. So yeah, it's there more as a safety matter, and it gives the city a way out if we are not a fan of the new telecom.
Thank you. And also, for these small cells, is it technically feasible to put like multiple ones on the same pole from different companies? In which case, if that is technically possible, how does the city or each of the individual companies account for any cumulative impacts potentially from the multiple uses of a single pole? And I apologize again, I'm new to this, so I'm
No,
sorry to the other commissioners.
That's an excellent question. Right now, the technology with the radios, they can't have multiple antennas on the same pole. They have to be a certain distance away or they interfere with each other. Now, that's not to say, I think in the future, technology is always changing, all the time. We get new cell phones, new technology. So it's very feasible. I do see, if I was going to be a fortune teller, it's probably that technology is going to be coming and we will start seeing multiple ones. And I believe if we don't have it in there, there should be provisions on there that if another telecom wants to use that in the future, that it could be opened up to them as well. And if we don't have that in there, I'm making a mental note and writing it down as well as a mental note that we should probably add some language in there for future technology improvements.
Okay. And then I noticed there was a clause about, interference and about, interference to the city operations, for instance, and whatnot. But is there also any concerns about, interference to the general public's, I don't know, anything, well-being or access, ability to use their technologies or anything like that with new vendors coming in for the polls? I'm sorry if I'm, again, asking really basic questions.
Yeah, if it has to do with it's basically RF emissions. When they do the RF emission testing, they do it, first of all, the first test is they take into consideration all the existing small cells or towers nearby, and they do a test to see the cumulative RF emissions. And then after it's installed, we do testing to make sure that that's an accurate model that they did before. And then as far as I guess I'm not, you said, what was
or just the ability of the public to enjoy whatever services that they were enjoying before, right? Like, is it possible putting up a new pole somehow interferes with current, a general individual's use of their, their own phones or own internet or anything like that, or wireless connections or anything like that?
It should not be interfering. We do have our municipal code, our recently updated code, and our design standards that would that limit. The only control we have is the time, place, and manner. So really, it's the aesthetics of these. But the actual, we can't prevent them from coming into the city, but we can control what they look like. And so, some people might construe that as to be interference with their enjoyment of their view from their home. But, just like an electrical power pole, we can't stop them from coming in.
Okay. And then I also noticed that there are 7.4, there's a prevailing wage clause, which was really helpful. My understanding is that basically that clause is referencing a California labor code, basically saying that the company will adhere to California labor code and prevailing wage. But section 7 is only for the equipment installation. Then there's sections 9 and other ones about and 8 about repairs. Do you know if the prevailing wage provision cited in section 7 applies to section 8 and 9 as well, even though they're not articulated there as much?
I'm not sure. That's a great question. And we can bring that up with our city attorney's office and make sure that it is included in there.
Great. I just didn't want it to be it's included in one and not in the others for clarity's sake. It might be nice to be consistent if that's in fact the case. And then the other thing about the funding or the amount of money received, the annual charge, the $270 is set by the FCC, right? Correct. But the FCC theoretically could change that amount at any given time, given their discretion. Is that accurate?
It's possible, but not likely. We enter into these agreements. I think, I thought the wording in there was basically that stated that if, in compliance with the FCC, so the maximum amount is what it is now. But if there's changes to that, then we would be able to increase it.
I would recommend reviewing that again. It
Okay.
looks like it just says the annual charge of $270, but my assumption would be better. It might be better to say or whatever FCC declares in the future kind of stuff, right?
No, that's great.
That's
Thank you.
section 412. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted just to confirm and I was a little unclear on is like, basically in the damages section in 1411, it says basically if the city elects not to perform work to replace or repair a damaged pole, that the licensee can do that at their cost. So does that mean that theoretically, like the licensee can just build a new pole there if the city is like gonna decline repairing?
So I think it's like if the pole is damaged, then the carrier would be the one to come out, or if they do not come out, then the city will come out, do the. So for example, if a light pole gets, which happens sometimes, it gets knocked down. Say it gets knocked down with there's a small cell on there. We're going to come out and we're going to make the repair to the street light. They're responsible for making the repairs to their small cell. We're not going to touch it.
Okay. It's not talking about the actual pole. Okay. And then the last thing I was confused about was for temporary takings 15.2. It talks about the licensee will receive a portion of an award, and basically if like something were to happen beyond both parties' control, right? And like basically that the licensee would receive a portion of an award that the city would receive for compensation, a portion of it, but I wasn't really clear on what that could mean, especially if it seemed like in the most outlier case, if the award was of less value than the damages to the licensee and the city combined, like how does the city figure that out? You know, if the damages were like several thousands of dollars and the award is only $100, like the city has to cover stuff anyway. So it was confusing to me, like why the licensee would get anything if the damages were so severe that the city should basically come first, maybe in that kind of a section. So that was a little strange to me, but that was just a flag. Maybe I'm reading it wrong.
I'm sorry, what section was that? Just so I'm taking notes.
Yeah, it's the taking section 14. Hold on, 15.2.
Okay, thank you.
Temporary takings. It might just need a little bit of like a assuming city coverage comes first or something like that, like language. It just seemed a little strange. Okay, now I have some questions for Crown. Thank you so much, Tracy, for answering all of my little questions for the city.
They're great. Thank you so much.
And so, hello, Mr. Myers. Thank you so much for your presentation, and it's lovely to meet you. I actually don't know anything about Crown Castle, but I did Google you before this this presentation and this meeting. So really appreciate your time and energy coming here. I was really curious, what is Crown Castle's approach to building relationships with the communities that you work in? There seemed to be a high emphasis on that on your website, but I was wondering if you could maybe share a little bit more detail about it. I noticed, for instance, that you featured Palo Alto on your website, but just curious if you had any stories to share with us and the public on how you build relationships with the communities you work in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here and for the question. Absolutely. Again, as we mentioned before, as being a neutral host provider and end user, owner, final owner of the asset, we take pride in having that. And so when we do sometimes we use outside vendors to help us perform some of the work, the relationship we own. And that's when we go and approach through permitting, through establishing the relationships for the agreement, and then the public outreach, kind of in the same way. So we do that generally through our government affairs team, but then also through the mid-management team, through the permitting, so that we can establish relationships from basically even the electeds, but city manager down, so that we know who the players are, if you will, in getting the permitting process through and working with them in a partnership relationship, establishing that. So it just depends on where and who's willing to sort of start off taking the call or having the meeting. A lot of times what we've been doing on a lot of these or some of these areas where we don't have relationships or agreements yet, we'll sort of connect through our government affairs, because they might have a pre-existing relationship through a different mechanism. And so it's usually how we sort of enter the situation and then sort of present ourselves to them and see what we can do to assist in, offering some type of relationship with the city. In a lot of jurisdictions, we do provide fiber services to the local jurisdiction. We have that backhaul availability, in local jurisdictions, sometimes when they develop their own fiber loops and things of that nature, or just want to provide connectivity to their own citywide infrastructure or their public safety, that usually is a good place for us to start and start building those relationships. But we like to think it's a wholesome and a holistic relationship. Top down and bottom up is kind of how we talk about it internally. So it starts when we walk in at the counter at the first day, but it also is ongoing, continuous, and also starts at the top down. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding of that.
Thank you. And also, I noticed on the map that you shared, there seemed to also be a high emphasis in certain regions, especially the Shoreview area, for instance. I was curious if you could speak to, who exactly do you hope your clients will be in the San Mateo area? And no, like you don't have to give understanding confidential business conversations or whatnot, but what are the types of clientele or the types of neighborhoods or whatnot that you hope to serve? Or are you serving, individual households is the hope, or is it more like you mentioned, hospitals and stuff like that? If you could give a little more detail.
Yeah, no, certainly. Absolutely. The map was there to demonstrate more specifically the small cell nodes that are more directly related to the agreement that's before you this evening. So aside from that, I mean, our business model is infrastructure, right? So that's a portfolio of towers, the big tall towers you see, sometimes stealth trees, attachments to lattice towers, things of that nature. And then now these small cells that are attaching not only to wood utility poles, but to city-owned infrastructure. And that's all connected or provides connectivity through the fiber that we own. So we never want to go into one jurisdiction and say, oh, we're only going to service, T-Mobile, or we're only going to service Verizon on these one small cells, because we look to be that one neck to strangle, right? We look to be that one opportunity, that one source to cover all of those. So a lot of times that helps minimize the impact that it would otherwise have if all three or all four carriers put up their own infrastructure. A lot of times they come to us because of the fiber that we have out there. Otherwise, they'd have to go to other means. Either they have it themselves or they go to the local exchange carrier to provide those services. So the benefit of us having it is that if we're running fiber, that happens to be there because of a tower, and we're connecting it to a small cell that's proposed by Verizon or something, and along the way of that commercial corridor, there's some commercial outfits that could benefit by having fiber services brought to them, then absolutely that creates greater opportunities for them to do that. We're trying to create ubiquitous coverage everywhere. So the small cells are sort of spread out based on where we think or where the need is based on a customer demand. So a lot of cases, what that means is now, especially with, in light of the pandemic and everything going on, is everybody's working from home, right? That's the last mile, or the last frontier in gaining that coverage. The initial macro cell network, as provides fabulous coverage in most areas, generally speaking, but that last frontier of challenging coverage it comes in a lot of times in residential areas. So these small cells, by virtue of what they are, they're so small and so low power that they can be placed in these, in residential areas with minimal impact or negligible impact whatsoever. And so that allows us to sort of get into those areas and offload that capacity that's built up on these other sites that are there, and or provide new coverage all the way right down into the users inside that house, the kids doing their homework, the kids having connectivity from their phone, or the business users, in their home, or the people that are working remotely. It's kind of the same thing. It all sort of goes back to that coverage and having that capacity and that connectivity.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That concludes my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
If I may, through the chair, would it be possible, Commissioner Narita, if you could please send us the questions? I think you said you had them, but you just didn't send them.
Yes, I have notes, and I can just flag the sections for you, Tracy, that I had the questions on.
Oh, that would be very helpful.
I'll owe you an email. I apologize in advance. I apologize that I did not give that to you in advance.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
Very good. I think I just had a question or two to kind of help understand how this agreement might differ from other agreements we've had. I think both commissioners have asked questions that have helped illuminate this somewhat, but I'm going to see if I can ask the question in a slightly different way to see if I am understanding what we're talking about tonight, and especially how it might differ. Because it sounds like I'm going to try by maybe asking Mr. Myers first. Would you say, Mr. Myers, that tonight the idea is to obtain a master license agreement so that you may install small cells on city-owned poles that can then be, as requested by Verizon or AT&T or any other clients you might have? But yeah, I mean, could you maybe give me us a little more of a sense of whether you intend to install small cells based on direct request and demand by clients, or perhaps in anticipation of future demand?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good question, right? So basically, because it's fairly expensive and time consuming and involved, while we do try to have connectivity and have our base fiber trunks built, when we build small cells, they are based on the request by our customers. So this initial sort of build here is an ask by our customers based on, where we could put fiber and where we could put small cells based on the need they have to bolster their coverage and their connectivity. So yes, absolutely. They come at the request of our customers, Verizon, AT&T and T-Mobile. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
So just the last part I was just
sure.
saying. So we wouldn't necessarily, just to round that out, we wouldn't just go out and build these 200 nodes if we didn't have a customer in place.
Right.
That's what I mean. Like, we're not going to go through the process and permit it and pay the fees and get everything ready and then go try to market it to somebody. We're coming at these because we intend to build them and get them up on air because they're absolutely needed and they are at a direct request of our customer.
Excellent. That is indeed what I was looking for. So I appreciate that. Sure. And I think I just wanted to try, Tracy, to ask you a little bit about how, whether staff perceives this license agreement differently in that way, because it seems to me that previously, at least in two maybe of the three license agreements that have already been approved, there seemed to be a more direct link between a wireless company that presumably knew a bit of its demand and was seeking to build its own infrastructure, but in this case, it sounds like Crown Castle would be acting as a partner with telecoms. Do you see, does that present a significant difference to staff?
No, really it doesn't. It's just that Crown Castle basically builds them and then they lease it out to a variety of providers. The previous ones are the actual providers. So Verizon and AT&T are the two big telecoms, and they have their own department that goes out and puts these in. But I'm certain that even that they can't keep up with. So Crown Castle is a resource for the other telecoms to provide more as another resource for them to provide small cells, because they can't keep up with their own growth, is from what I'm hearing.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, and I guess the fact that this master license agreement, as you noted before, I think in response to one of Commissioner Robbins' questions, asks for each applicant to meet certain guidelines that work with the city's overall program and plan and the FCC guidelines, et cetera. it is therefore not materially different as far as the city is concerned, who might be, requesting, for example, a small cell from Crown Castle, because each one that it builds would be within the boundaries of the agreement.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for bearing with me as I tried to get through that. I think that concludes my questions, and I thank the commissioners for their questions. And I would like to take this opportunity to open up public comment on this item. So if you are on the Zoom meeting, you can raise your hand at this time if you'd like to make a comment on this item. If you're on the phone, you may press *9 to raise your hand to make a comment on this item. Now is the time, please.
I see no hands raised.
Thank you, Cookie. Going once, going twice, and I will close public comment on this item and bring it back to the commission for any final comments related to this item. And because we have 3 people, I see Commissioner Robbins reaching. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think it was excellent presentation. I appreciate the questions from other commissioners and the responses. I guess my only comment is to try and come up with a way I would like. Well, Tracy, tell me if you need something different, but I think what you need is the commission to approve this so you can send it up to council in a timely fashion. I'm going to need Kimmy's acquiescence here somewhat, or input, whether we, give conditional approval, subject to resolution of her questions. I don't think we want to go too crazy on the temporary takings issue and how that's parsed out. But I also don't want to hold it up, but I also don't want to give short shrift to any of those questions. What do you need from us, Tracy?
Basically, we just need a motion with either your approval or support for the agreement, which we would then bring to City Council. My open question is on the resolution of the insurance coverage amounts, but I'm confident that that staff will resolve that in a way that's sufficient. So I could make that motion, but in the form of discussion, Commissioner Narita, to be formal, what do you, would you be comfortable supporting sending this up with an understanding that your questions will be at least responded to? I don't know whether they'll edit or not. It's up to staff, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's up to staff and it's up to the city attorney. I actually had hoped maybe the city attorney was going to be on the call, on the meeting. But I'm comfortable with that. I can send my questions, itemized to Matthew and Tracy and get them resolved. I'm just thinking about this obviously from the perspective of the city, right, and the public. And so all the questions I have, none of them are blocking concerns in my mind for supporting this effort. It's more like these are details that probably should be flagged in order to make life easier for staff in the future. If anything were to happen, in any of these, right, that's the kind of whole point of a master license agreement, is that it's supposed to account for a global perspective on the relationship with this company. And so but none of it to me is a blocking concern. They're all things that in the aggregate could make a big headache for someone later down the line and it's better to resolve now.
Okay, well, I will make a motion, but I'll wait until the others have comments since I went first. But thank you. for the response. Back to you, Adam.
Very good. Yeah, I think that I frankly feel satisfactory about this item and will be voting to approve it for now. But I do appreciate Vice Chair Narita's questions, both to help the public get a slightly better understanding of small cell infrastructure and this evolving process. And as she noted, to highlight any particular items that as we continue to evolve this program, we can keep an eye on to make sure we're continually doing our best to be to the residents of San Mateo and Public Works and indeed those who enter into such agreements with the city. So with that, I would like to entertain a motion.
Second.
Okay. Let me get it out there. But thank you. I love being seconded.
No, you entertain the motion. Yeah, I'll second your motion, Commissioner.
No, you've just given me carte blanche. I'm going to move that we all get ice cream. No, I'm sorry. Thank you. It's seconded already. Okay, it's not even late. I have no excuse for being punchy. Yeah, I will just move that that the commission approve the master license for Crown Castle and recommend it up to the council. We don't get to actually have a final say. And I guess I would add to the motion that doesn't detract from that we appreciate staff's response to the questions and comments, and we'll hope to see those inputs either in this license or the next iteration. There will be more. Is that fair? You can withdraw your second if you want.
No, that sounds good. I'll second.
Thank you. Cookie, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Lorraine,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Narita.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Mr. Myers, and thank you, Tracy and Matthew.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
staff.
you.
This concludes our item number 2. I would like to now move on to reports and announcements and ask staff if any representatives from staff have any reports or announcements to start.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director. I would just like to share that I hope you noticed on the crystal ball, we are planning to return to you in December with an annual update on what Public Works has been up to. So we thought, given your questions, that it would be a good idea for us to actually make this an annual occurrence in December, given also that we missed an opportunity to hold the citizens, have you all gone through the Citizens Academy? Don't think that's something that the city has done for many years, and because of COVID has been canceled. And it's a good way to learn about what every department does. But given that I think this is the second year that has been canceled, we just thought it would be good for us to give a comprehensive report on our divisions to you on an annual basis. So that will happen in December, and it will be led by our 2 deputies.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
And I will say that I have indeed participated. I'm feeling a little called out right now, but yes, I did indeed participate in at least 1 year City of San Mateo City Services Academy, I believe we call it. So a very helpful and informative experience. But as I believe you may be alluding to, Director Mitch, meetings such as this one are also potentially informative opportunities for members of the public to learn a bit more about what's going on in public works. And so that sounds like a great idea. I certainly got a lot from last year's end of year overview of what was to come on the public works side. And in fact, I did sort of think, and I should have mentioned, now it's my turn to apologize for not asking ahead of time, but I will just throw out there that it would be even nicer if there might be an opportunity for the Sustainability Office to chime in a little bit with any similar thoughts on what's ahead for 2022. I realize we have a bit of a change in staff at the moment. And I don't think we have Denise with us today, but that's, I'll just note it for the public, but I won't hold anybody to it. I just think that ended up happening last year, and that was also very well received and useful and informative. So if that happens to be possible, that would be wonderful. I didn't mean to cut you off, though, Director Mitch. Was there anything else you wanted to?
No,
okay.
that's great. I know that because we have staff on leave, so they are a bit short-staffed, but I will relay the message.
Excellent. And I think I just need to cut in one moment to, frankly, first sort of mention to Mr. Hedges with his comment earlier. I didn't mean to be... I hope I didn't come off as dismissive. I frankly am still learning a little bit on the best way to word how to respond to a general public comment in the most appropriate and yet also helpful way. Given that we cannot comment on tonight on the item in question, I think because everybody knows who Richard Hedges is, there will be no need to necessarily ask for a separate email to Public Works. I think Director Mitch is certainly aware, and perhaps I can ask staff to provide at least a brief response to that public comment following this meeting. And if you wouldn't mind sharing the response with the commission, maybe copying the Sustainability Commission, I would appreciate it very much. Would that be all right, Director Mitch?
Yes, absolutely. We will follow up.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I hope that I appreciate people's patience with me. I also, frankly, just want to take a moment to announce my disappointment in tripping over the items a little bit earlier today. This is not the first time I've done that, and it's not a good look. And I'm a little surprised because for somebody who's attended as many meetings as I have, you would think that it would be burned into my memory. But I nevertheless am not meeting expectations here. So I'm going to take it to heart, and I don't think it will happen again. So I appreciate your patience with me on that. With that, I would like to ask the commissioners with me if they have any reports or announcements to give. Okay, well, I always try to have at least something to say. So, and indeed, I've already said some things, but I have a couple other announcements that I think might be of interest to the public. Well, actually, before we completely diverge from the crystal ball discussion as well, I did just want to check Director Mitch about the quarterly bike fed update. I know last year and throughout we had a discussion about potentially having them 3 times a year. So I was a little surprised to see that potentially being an item in December, given that we had met in September. And I just wanted to see if staff felt comfortable with that potentially being an item in December, or if that might, if you might be interested in changing it.
It might actually be good to change it, because I think it would be most helpful to come back to you actually in January, given the North Central project. We will be reaching out to the community As you know, we're in the process of developing a plan, a strategy. So I'm thinking it may be best to then push that out. We wanted to sort of do something, end of the year as well, but beginning of next year would likely just be better timing. So we will reschedule that.
Okay, hopefully other commissioners don't have strong objections to that. But I don't. So I did just want to check on that and thank you for that. Okay, and then on to a couple quick report or announcements, rather, I guess.
For the chair, sorry.
Oh, yes, of course.
And Director Mitch, is the November meeting going to be canceled then, or?
Yes, so we typically cancel a meeting one a year, and it typically is in the summer, but we didn't this year, and we thought that it would be nice to give you all a break and then come back to you in December with the year in review. And then we'll be getting ready for the Blue Sky session with council, which will happen in January.
Excellent. That sounds good to me as well. Thank you, Vice Chair. It's good to just make sure that is mentioned during the meeting, so I do appreciate that. I did just want to make sure to announce before I forget that we have an ongoing campaign in which we're taking comments from the public about an item that we discussed somewhat recently, San Mateo Walks to Transit. I just saw from the city communications that the deadline for input has been extended, which is great news. There's more time to get in your input. We're currently conducting a campaign to get input from residents in the city who used our main 3 Caltrain stations and Samtrans on El Camino Real, I would say primarily. And if those who are accessing those via bicycling or walking or scooting, kind of anything other than your typical cars parking in the areas. If you're accessing the transit and Caltrain or Salmon Trans on El Camino Real, we'd love to hear from you about your experience. There's a survey available on the city website. There's a map tool that you can use to show the city where you go, what your commute is like, or even if it's not necessarily a work commute, if you use it on the weekends, and how it could potentially be improved. So please go to the city website at www.cityofsanmateo.org/transit walk, all one word, transit walk. San Mateo Walks to Transit. The deadline has been extended to October 31st. So you have a few more weeks ahead. Please, we'd love to hear from you in English and in Spanish, I might add. Also, we have a districting process going on in the city of San Mateo, and it's entering something of the home stretch. The city council has had a number of public hearing meetings about this. It has looked at a number of draft maps submitted by a third-party redistricting partners that's working with the city on the process, and from a number of maps, comments, community of interest forms, and other input from the public. But there's still an opportunity to weigh in, and as we're getting into later stages, it's becoming a bit more granular. So the council last week decided to look more deeply into one of the map alternatives, and a number of variations of that map are now available. We'd love your input on that, or if you have other ideas, you can draw your own map through a District R tool and give other comments on our site. So we would love to get input from you at www.cityofsanmateo.org/district elections, all one word. And the next public hearing on this is tomorrow. I believe it's at 6 o'clock. Tomorrow on Zoom. The council is looking at another set of maps, as I had mentioned. So I encourage you to consider attending that meeting and/or giving your own comments at the page I noted. I think I had one more. which was about the electric leaf blower rebate program that the city of San Mateo has. I just wanted to acknowledge that we received a public comment tonight, and we received a couple of emails as well from the public about the subject of electric leaf blowers, or rather about gas-powered leaf blowers, and really future actions on leaf blowers in general. I just wanted to make sure everybody attending was aware that we currently have an electric leaf blower rebate program in which residents of San Mateo can receive up to $100, and commercial companies can earn up to get up to $500 back off of purchases of electric leaf blowers in an effort to shift us from gas leaf blower programs. That's on our sustainability page at the City of San Mateo's webpage. And I couldn't exactly find whether we had a nice fitting sort of / URL for that one, but you can go to the city's main page, cityofsanmateo.org. And I thought this might be a good opportunity to just point out that we in fact have a sustainability page that you might want to check out. It's community. When you're on the front page of our website, you can mouse over community. There are a number of options underneath community, one of which is called community resources. And under that is called, you'll see the word sustainability. And if you click on that, we have a sustainability page with a number of programs that you can become familiar with by attending these meetings, as our items are often about those programs. And so I believe there's still an opportunity to apply for a rebate. We have gotten a number of rebates applied for, and so the program is midway, but there's still an opportunity to do that. And there may be an opportunity to discuss more about this at a future date. But I will leave it there. I will thank people for their time, and if nobody else has any other things to note, then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Good night.